In this video, we are going to start simplifying expressions with roots whenever we have variables, and it's not going to be as easy as when the number was evenly divided by the index of the root. Then that would be easy. So for example, let's say I wanted to simplify something like square root of c to the power of 4. Well, the index of square root is 2, so usually we don't write it, but if we had to write it, it would be over here. And then all you have to do is just divide by the index, and that's just going to be c squared, okay? But what if it doesn't evenly divide? Like, what if I have to simplify the square root with the power 5, right? Because if I try to do 5 divided by 2, that's not going to give me a whole number. Here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to represent this number as a mixed number. This is what's called improper fraction. You need to convert it to a mixed fraction, which is like a whole and some part. All right. And this method is actually, I have to give a shout out to Professor Souza, who is the biggest star on YouTube in math. The channel is called Math is Power for You, for giving this idea of how to represent a number, how to convert a number from improper fraction to a mixed fraction. Here's how you do that. First, start with just typing 5 divided by 2. Okay, so it tells you that's 2.5. You already know this number here. That's the whole part. You need the fractional part. Okay, so first of all, the fractional part will have the same denominator as whichever one you started with. So if this is 2, this is 2. All you have to do is figure out what's on the top. Now, you may know that 0.5 is 1/2, but let's say you don't know that, or let's say it's a much more complicated example. Here's what you do. You're going to subtract the integer or the whole part. You're going to subtract 2. Okay? And then whatever you get, so why am I subtracting 2? Because 2 is this number right here. That's what I got, the whole part, right? And then whatever you got now, you can click on the fraction button, and that tells you that's 1/2. So now you were able to take a improper fraction and convert it to a mixed fraction. And then here's how you're going to simplify this root. So here's what you can do. You're going to say c to the power of what? Well, the same as the yellow part, the whole part. So it'll be c squared. Then you're going to put the root, and it's going to be c to what power? Whichever number you got on the top. Okay, like right here. That's the power that goes in here. So that's going to be 1 right here. Now, why does this work? Because basically what happens is that c to the 5 is broken apart into c squared times c. Okay? And then these two are the same. So when you take the square root, only one of them will be left. But then the square root of c will still stay there. Okay? So that's how you do it. But let me give you more examples. All right, let me give you more examples. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so that one is square root of 64 q to the power 21. Here it's going to be a little bit more complicated because there's also a number in the front. But let's attempt to take the square root of 64. Does that work? Yes, that's just 8. Okay, so then I can just say, okay, this is square root of 64 multiplied by square root of q to the power 21, which is 8. And then the square root of q to the power 21, I still have to simplify. Okay, how do I do that? First, I'm going to divide 21 by the index of the root, which is 2. And then I have to convert it to that mixed fraction. So let's do that. Let's take 21 divided by 2. Okay, the whole part of it is 10, so that's going to be 10. And the 0.5 is pretty clearly is 1/2, but if you want to actually see it, subtract 10, click on the fraction thingy, you will see it's 1/2. So how do you simplify it? Okay, so you're going to have 8, then you're going to have q to what power? Well, whatever this number is, that goes in here. That's the outside, what's outside of the root. Then you're going to have the square root, and then what's inside? Q to which power? The power that you see on the top, this 1 right here, that goes in here. In other words, it's just q to the power 1, which is q. So the simplification is 8 q to the power 10 multiplied by square root of q. Okay, so this is again 8 q to the 10 square root of q. This one we simplified as c squared square root of c. Okay. Let's look at the last one, and that's probably the hardest one, of course. Of course, I have to do a hard one. Okay, so this is 63 d to the power 11. Now, here you have to actually simplify both of them. Okay, so we're going to simplify square root of 63, and we're also going to simplify d to the power 11. Okay, how do you simplify square root of 63? The first thing you're going to do is just see, okay, maybe it's just going to be a nice answer. But nope, no such luck. So that means that we're going to have to see if we can simplify it by looking at the perfect squares chart. So we're looking at the squares and seeing all the numbers that are less than 63. Okay, the first one I see is going to be 49. Can I divide 63 by 49 and get an integer? Nope. Okay, the next number after that is 36. Can I do that? Can I get an integer? No. Okay, the next number would be 25, but you know that that's not going to work. How about 16? And that did not work. Okay, the next after 16 is 9. Okay, so I'm just dividing by these squares and okay, I got it. What I was able to do is write down 63 as 9 times 7. And that is going to split into square root of 9, square root of 7. But what is square root of 9? Well, that's just 3. So this first part is going to be 3 square root of 7. Now let's deal with the other part, with the variable part. Again, I'm going to start with 11 divided by the index of the root. So it's going to be 11 halves. I need to write it as a mixed fraction. Okay, so it tells me when I divide it, it's 5.5. So in other words, that's going to be 5.5. But again, if you want to see it, you subtract 5 and then just click and you will see that the 1/2 is the answer. Okay, so that means it's going to be d to what power? Well, whatever, I'm going to just be consistent, whatever is this number. So this is going to be d to the power 5. And then it'll be square root of d to what power? Well, whatever is the numerator of that fractional part. So that's 1. So that's just going to be d to the 1. Okay, so let's put it all together. So we've got 3 square root of 7, then d to the 5, then square root of d. Now, we do not need to write d to the power 1 because that's just d. Now, the last part is to combine the parts that don't have the square roots, which by combining, I just mean write them next to each other. And then the square root part right under one lone square root. So that's going to be 7d there. Okay, this one's really, really complicated. Yeah, but I'm sure you can do it. You just have to practice. So let's just say square root of 7d. Hopefully that's it.